let's get to this. So, Joe, you want to get to our power rankings very quickly?
Yeah,
really quickly? All right. So, Joe, after week 1, we go to week 2, and we give our power rankings every single week when we do this. We're going to do our top 10. So I want to make it very well known because we got ripped in the show last week about this. Our power rankings are not what we would rate teams, right? This isn't a rating. This is a ranking, a power ranking in reference to what we think that we've seen so far through week 2. Joe, here's your top 10. Read it off. Let the people know, who do you have 1 through 10 in your power rankings?
Yeah, first of all, a lot of Bama fans are mad because I didn't put them in the top 10. I'm high on Bama. I think Bama's great, but y'all beat up on Western Kentucky, which is awesome. I'd put you guys at 11. I just think that Tennessee was freaking scary. I had to put them in there. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Miami. Number 4, Texas. Number 5, Oregon. Number 6, Ole Miss. Number 7, Notre Dame. Number 8, Penn State. Number 9, Tennessee. And number 10, USC.
So here's mine, not a lot more different. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Miami. Number 4, Ole Miss. Number 5, Penn State. Number 6, Oregon. 7, Texas. Number 8, Notre Dame. Number 9, Tennessee. And then at 10, we have USC. Where you want to start it off here, for good sir?
There's really not much separation here because we kind of leaned in on the teams that had tougher matchups.
How about this? Both of us did not put Bama in our top 10. Go first. Why don't you have Bama in there?
I don't think it's not an indictment on them. I think that the minute that one of these top 10 teams lose, I would put them in there. They beat Western Kentucky. The conversation I had with myself is, do I put Tennessee in or do I put Alabama in? And I was really freaking blown away with how good Nico looked, which we're going to talk about in the preview in a second. They're going to smoke NC State, and they're going to continue to drive up their stock as a top team this year. It's nothing against Bama. I just want to give the shot to another team. Every year, Bama is a top 5 team. God forbid I want to go with somebody else.
The question becomes this early in the season about teams is, who are you going to take out? Now, we could have taken out Tennessee. We could have taken out USC. But, look, USC had a very tough game and a tough opponent, and they won. Then you have Tennessee, who scored 31 points in a quarter and then only gave up 2 total yards in the first quarter, which is absolutely ridiculous. Look, I think Bama, to some extent, they feel like that they don't have to prove anything when it comes to because they have been the pinnacle of college football for 2 decades. I feel like their fan base thinks that they don't have to prove things under Kalen DeBoer. And I think that they do. Okay. And I think that there are other teams in here that just look better in week 1. Now, clearly, Bama in week 3, they play South Florida this week. What are we going to learn about Bama? And then in week 3, they go to Camp Randall and play Wisconsin. In reference to Alabama, I think both of us are pretty high on them, right? I think both of us are still very, very high on them, but I think that they have some other things that they have to prove, and I don't think that's an indictment on them. We're both really high on them. Now, here's the conversation that I had about Bama and why I should have put them in and wanted to put them in over this team. I almost overreacted to Oregon. Okay, so you have Oregon on your list here at number 5, and I have them at number 6. Oregon this weekend, against Idaho, did not look good, man. They just didn't. And I think some things were clunky offensively. Some things look bad. Joe, I got to be honest. I don't even know if I like my pick at Oregon in my top 10, but I put them in there because I didn't want to overreact.
I think it would be a step too far to completely take him out of it. I think Oregon's still going to be a top premier team by the end of the season. They just look like they're still figuring things out. I think that their offensive line gave up too easy of pressures against an Idaho defensive line that's good for an FCS team, but should not be one that's giving you fits if you're Oregon. Thought things were a little bit sloppy. There were some just bad late penalties, poor execution in the red zone. They're going to rebound, but they should drop. You struggle with a team like Idaho, who's not even a top 5 FCS team. It's a problem. It's an issue.
Don't let Rack hear you say that.
He'll I gave Idaho their props on the FCS show that I did this morning, so Idaho fans could be, as happy as they need to be. But Oregon, my whole point is here, a bad week 1 game against an FCS opponent isn't everything to me. But yeah, the red flag does need to start to move a little bit because you can't play like that in your Big Ten schedule.
Here's the thing that I look at Oregon too. You mentioned one thing about pass rush. Keyshawn James Newby had 6 tackles for Idaho. 2 of those were sacks. Now, do you know anything about this kid as a draft prospect? I mean, you covered the FCS too. Do you know anything about this kid?
No, nope.
Okay, so he's not like a big riser coming up in the NFL. Okay, then Dallas Afala also had a sack. Joe, they generated 13 pressures and 3 sacks.
That's terrible.
Here's the thing on those 13 pressures. Are you ready? Dylan Gabriel got hit 10 times.
And his hand got banged up at one point too because he took a pressure. They can't do this. Like this, if there's an early fraud watch, it might be Oregon. I'm gonna be a little aggressive in saying that's a problem the way that they played.
They got banged up along the offensive line, right? Their right tackle's out. They've been banged up a little bit there. It is what it is. But man, you're getting pushed around by Idaho. And no, I'm not a hoe, you the hoe, but Idaho. I mean, it's just the truth, man. I mean, 13 pressures. Dylan Gabriel gets hit 10 times. And look, Dylan is an absolutely elite processor. He doesn't have the talent, but he's an elite processor. Anytime that you have to go in a game against an FCS opponent and throw the ball 49 times, that is a cause for concern. But here's what I didn't understand. Jordan James had 95 yards rushing. Why did they not continue to run the football? Is a big-time question mark for me. I've got a team that was not able to stop the run. All right.
Yep.
Oh, you want to keep on?
Well, the only other thing I had to add there, I still feel really good about the prediction that we had in the offseason. I think that Ohio State's going to beat Oregon when they play them at Oregon. I think that they're going to push them around up the middle especially.
Very, very well could. Joe, let's talk about Penn State here. I have them at 5. You have them at 8. I know that you have a lot of strong opinions about Penn State. Your thoughts on the Nittany Lions?
Well, they proved me wrong a ton. I didn't have them really as a top 10 team for me in the preseason. It all came down to how much more does Drew Allar look comfortable and how much more can they stretch the field with their receivers, which was a huge, huge concern. And I felt pretty good about it. I would love to see how they're going to match up when they play other top Big Ten teams, but they've got a really easy schedule that's super favorable for them. And their defense, their front seven's pretty aggressive. Dennis Sutton and Jesus Christ.
They reloaded on defense.
They did. And I feel better about Penn State. I feel good enough until they falter and they miss a step. I feel like they've locked themselves into being like that 8th, 9th, or 10th team for most of the rest of the season.
I had them at 10. I had them at 10 in the playoff mainly due to that. What is Penn State, Joe? Look, call James Franklin overrated. Call them whatever you want. What do we know about them? They're going to be 10-2. They're going to run the football moderately effectively, okay? And they're going to do some good things defensively. Actually, some borderline elite things defensively. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you why I'm a little bit higher on Penn State than maybe you. Andy Kotelnicki. Okay.
Good reason.
And look, man, I think that just offensively, they have a really good running game. I thought their offensive line got serious push, not just on the exterior, but the interior. Am I freezing up here? No. Okay.
No, you're good.
On the interior, they got a lot of push on the interior. And then look, man, I know Drew Allar had a good game and against them last year, but it's a completely different feel though, Joe. Right? Like let me say it like this. They had a 2-hour weather delay. It's like a pitcher having to come back and throw in a game after you're sitting for 2 hours. And by the way, he goes out there and dots them up in the second half. Absolutely dots them up. So for that reason, look, man, I'm going to be a little bit higher on them. They're going to have to prove me wrong. We'll see about Penn State. All right, who else on your list do you want to get to here? I know we'll talk about Tennessee in just a minute. You want to get to Notre Dame or Ole Miss? Where do you want to go?
I mean, Ole Miss played Furman, so we shouldn't really react to that. I think Notre Dame.
Let's get to Notre Dame. Let's get to Notre Dame then.
I want to go higher on Notre Dame. I think that we need to take their win over Tennessee with high. It has a high impact, but with some or not Tennessee over
Tennessee. You mean
Texas A&M. Texas A&M. Their win over Texas A&M is huge. It's a good resume piece. We got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. This can be a back end top 25 ranked team for most of the year if they play as good as they could. I think that Notre Dame, though, proved to me that there's only one direction for them to go, and that's up. They got to improve a little bit more offensively, and I think that as they start to get more comfortable with themselves and Riley Leonard starts to build chemistry with Den Brock and with the receivers, they're going to continue to get better. I feel pretty good about Notre Dame, and I almost went as far as to put them at 5. I just didn't want to get caught up in the you call me out for being a homer, even though, my some of my predictions so far have kind of come to fruition.
I tweeted this, and Notre Dame fans were all over me all weekend, and it's fine. I don't care. I literally have like 2/3 of your fan base muted on Twitter, so it doesn't really matter. Here's what I'd say. I question, Joe, if they get in a game against a team that's all been together and has more cohesiveness. Like, if you go up against it, I don't know the team. Like, pick a team, but it's been together for a while, has more cohesiveness. Maybe not as talented as A&M.
That's only like two. It's only like 2 teams. That's Georgia and Ohio State. Like, most of these teams are kind of still figuring their shit out.
Notre Dame would play
in a playoff. You're saying?
No, I'm just mean in general. Like, I mean, I don't, like I said, and like I said yesterday, I don't want to take away from their win. However, I also don't want to look at A&M, who's been, Joe, they haven't had a winning season in 3 years.
That's not true. They had a winning season last year.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they did.
No, they didn't.
They went
5-7. They've won 5-7 the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they were 7-6.
Okay. So 7-6 and then 5-7. What were they the year before?
Wasn't that the year that they had the crazy? They were 5-7 in 2022, and then 2021 they were 8-4.
Okay, so a team that has not gotten over 8 wins, and we're considering that. You get what I'm trying to say here?
It's a good win.
I didn't say it wasn't a good win, but Joe, if you didn't beat a team that doesn't have double-digit win, I mean, come on. Let me give a comparison here. You ready? Before Harbaugh and Michigan got really good, they'd be like a SEC team going up to Michigan and beating them. A lot of hype around Michigan, but if you beat them, I mean, what have they done?
Okay. So you think that you don't think that this Notre Dame team is as good as everyone's acting they are?
Defensively, they're elite. Look, I'll go ahead and tell you. I've been making a joke on my other shows to mess around with you, saying don't tell my co-host Joe that their defense is elite. I think their defense is elite. I worry about them offensively. I do.
I think for a guy that missed his entire spring, I think that there's only improvement that's going to come from it. And they're not going to get tested on their schedule. There's no defense that's like really going to strain them on the schedule. Maybe Georgia Tech.
I'm going to throw this out here at you. You know how crazy everybody was that Louisville stunk? Maybe they don't stink. I mean, Louisville suffocated dudes the other night.
Who do they play again?
I have no idea.
It was an FCS team. I think the real challenge is going to be when they play USC, and I like that when both these teams are comparably good, and I hope that they're both ranked in the top 10 because that would make for a momentous battle at the end of the season. But I think Notre Dame wins that. I think that Notre Dame's defense is that much better than maybe not that much better than USC's offense, but I think that they could put together a huge game.
Here's what I'd say about that game. The wide receivers of USC versus the DBs of Notre Dame is NFL level quality content.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Joe, I want to go to Georgia here. Both of us have Georgia at 1. Look, man, I'm just going to call it like I see it. Georgia's the best team in the country, in my opinion. I thought they were the best team in the country, in my opinion. Look, I know that they have a very tough schedule, and they got some injuries. They got some guys banged up, but but Etienne comes back. The Frazier kid at running back I thought looked really good. They got another wide receiver, another white kid from off the street. Like they pluck white receivers out of anywhere. Like This kid was at the local Waffle House, and then he just comes out here, and then Landon Humphrey comes out here. I just think from top to bottom, they are the most talented team in the country, and they're both number one in our power rankings.
They're the only team that's never had a question. And last year, the only questions that they had was health, which is the only thing that ever slows down a team this good in a program this good. They are going to go on the run that everyone thinks. I think so many people overthought who the best team in the country is. I've seen some people think that Oregon was going to beat Georgia. That's not going to happen. Georgia is on a different level. There's going to be some hard-fought battles that they have to go through. They're not going to blow everybody out, but they are so freaking well-rounded at every single position group. It's the only way to look at it.
The only thing here, now I have Texas in my top 10. I have Texas at 7. You don't have them in your top 10 power rankings.
No, I did. I had them at 4.
Oh, did you? Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
That test in and of itself is going to be really good, right? Like I think them going to Austin is going to be a really tough battle. But I just don't – I think they're – like you said, they're better than everybody at pretty much every position.
Yeah.
And for that reason, that's why we're going to keep them in 1.
This video is sponsored by the online fitness training camp presented by Chris Gates Fitness. When I first started talking about Chris, about partnering with our show, not only was I excited to have a fitness sponsor for our pod, but more importantly, when I found out about how he can help people achieve their goals, I was even more bought in, because when the football season starts, it is so tough to stay on top of things and also to be able to enjoy yourself on Saturdays when it's game day. With Chris Gates Fitness's online training camp, you're going to be able to effectively stay focused, consistent, burn fat, build muscle, and do it with a like-minded community of individuals working towards the same thing. On top of this, you're going to be able to get direct coaching from Chris and the ability to ask him questions with an access to a live Q&A where you can get direct, personalized support from Chris himself. Don't wait any longer. If you're trying to get in shape during this fall and you want to be able to do it with the right support system, head on over to chrisgatesfitness.com/training camp or click the link in the description. And you need to do it today because you can get the first month. Personal training is expensive, folks. The first month for only $10 when you use that code RuffinoJoe. Don't wait any longer. Head on over there. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.